Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Another episode of Sales and Cigars, and our guest today is Mike Koory. Mike is a member of the Helix family, a member of our team. He is specializing and focusing on working with VPs of sales and sales leaders and some CEOs in smaller companies to help them create a sales culture that's high performance, hire better salespeople, and onboard better salespeople. Make sure that we go through a proper interviewing process. So I'm real excited to talk to Mike because we've tried this 3 times and we finally got Mike to be able to get the technology to work and to be able to get this done. So I'm real excited about this. I'm going to finish smoking my Nat Sherman Metropolitan. Go grab a cocktail, a cigar, strap in, get ready for another great episode of Sales and Cigars with Mike Koory. So, Michael, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you taking a few minutes out of
Glad to be here. Glad we were able to. The third time was a charm.
It's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He's an IT guy, right, at the heart, and he's sort of transitioned to something else. But he couldn't get his freaking internet to be stable enough. Couldn't keep the thing going. It took us 4 tries to get the thing recorded. And he ultimately had to go to his phone.
I don't quite feel as bad for the same troubles that I had. If an IT pro.
But we did all that within an hour. This you and I have gone over like
okay, yeah,
2 months.
It is me then.
So, but we're here. We're started. It's good. So, why don't you take 45 seconds and explain your role at Helix right now? What you're trying to accomplish, what your drivers are.
So with the great resignation that happened and a lot of the shift, we're seeing real struggles with building sales teams and getting the right sales talent. So what my focus for our practice is right now is building out how to truly help the VPs of sales and the CEOs get not only the right cultural fit, but get the team that is capable of scaling. So really build a high performance sales culture.
So hiring salespeople that are going to make it happen
for that company in their market to their customers at the price point they want, and really fit in with building that cultural fit.
Love it. All right, great. So your background, which is one of the reasons why working together I thought was a good idea, was that your background is opposite of mine. I've always worked when I had jobs and work for the man, so to speak. They were small companies. Some of them were family run, but they were always on the smaller side. And your background is corporate.
And lots of big companies,
America.
Lots of big healthcare companies and big furniture companies, big outsourcing companies.
So when you look at that world to the world that you're immersed in now, and if you think about it from the biggest challenge to transition from the corporate sales world, because you held sales positions and management positions all along the way, different levels. But what's the big challenge for you to go from that world to our world of entrepreneurs, of people that are it's their money, right? And they're what we're trying to accomplish here. What's
the biggest challenge you referred to it. It's their money. It's the budget dollars are real when you're dealing with entrepreneurs, when you're dealing with business owners. The dollars are much more real, and the effect has to be able to move the needle. So the real challenge is trying to truly understand where their problem is and what they're trying to achieve, and get real clarity, because ultimately you want to move them from where they're at to where they want to go, because the dollars are real. It's the difference between vacation dollars, new cars, college. It's not just a budget on a line item that's uh, being put on a spreadsheet.
Line item on a budget. So what? But in terms of where you were, where your headspace was, your approach, is that any
Huge,
different than
huge
what we're
difference.
doing?
In the corporate world, a lot of what I was doing was what we've affectionately called pitch and chase. You'd pitch the person in front of you, you get a meeting, you'd pitch what you could do, and close them, and then start chasing them, and often get ghosted. And our approach is, as you know, much more consultative, much more real, to see, does it make sense to do anything? Is there a problem worth solving? Can we agree upon that, and then have a conversation about how it moves forward? And so it's a whole different way of meeting the client and working together.
So I've had 3 meetings today where I'm, working with salespeople, coaching them on, and these are folks that good people have had success, but they send out proposals because somebody asked them to. I'm like, okay, so how do you know you're going to win this? What's their criteria for making a decision? What's the timeline that they're going to have to make the decision? What did you agree to do before you sent out the proposal? Why is this important? And I don't fire those questions off just like I just described, but I can ask one or two of those questions, and I'm like, well, they asked for a
Right.
proposal. I got to give it
Yep.
to them. And when I say why, I get this look like, what do you mean
That's what I
why?
do.
That's my job.
I get meetings, I pitch, I give them a proposal. I'm excited when they ask for my presentation, and they tell me what a great presentation it was, and boy, this looks like it might be promising. And you send it off, and then they ghost out. And not doing that, and not giving the proposal right away without understanding what's going to come in the next few steps. That's one of the biggest differences. And it's what ultimately entrepreneurs, to back to your first question, entrepreneurs and salespeople, that's what they need moving forward, because doing it the old way, doing it the way I was doing it, doesn't work. You might have some fall in your lap, but for the most part, you're pitching and chasing ghosts.
Yeah, well, these people are running 17 to 22% win rates. And, when I say, what does it cost you to put together a proposal? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what does it cost to put a proposal together at your organization? Your time, operational support people, engineers, whoever's involved. And they were like, well, I don't know. Well, how do you know what the cost of the lead is? How do you know what the cost of this proposal is? I mean, if you stop doing half of the proposals because they weren't qualified and you won 2 out of 5, your close ratio is a little better, and then we're not wasting time. The cost goes down, and they just, I'm just trying to figure out. Well, I guess I want your perspective as to why is that so freaking hard for people to understand that if you qualify people better,
Yeah.
you have a higher win
It
rate.
probably goes all the way back to the sales hiring and onboarding. If I think back to all of my training and development for what it was in my career, it mostly involved around the product, the sales deck, the pitch deck, and being able to deliver it and answer objections. So if you had a breathing person in front of you that wanted a proposal, you're halfway through the win. And so it's the whole orientation is skewed. And the companies that are changing it, as you know, as we've seen, the companies that change that get a different result. And the kind of frustration that we feel when we're dealing with the people that are stuck in the loop, is palpable, because when you move away from it, and through our conversations, sometimes the challenge of moving away from it, unwinding all of that, traditional approach is not always as easy as it looks, or as it should be.
No, it's changing mindsets and changing how people look at it is is a much more difficult work. It's a heavier lift than just working on skills. It's getting people to realize that what you've been doing has been getting you this result. That's not working. So why don't we try to do this? And then
Right.
maybe we get a different result. So I was talking to an entrepreneur today about sales hiring process. He needs to hire one person, and it's got to be right. It's critical. All of these things. And when we were talking, he's like, I think that this, if we make a mistake with this hire, it's probably going to cost us about 200,000. And I'm like, well, I think you're wrong. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, it's probably closer to 350 than it is 200,000. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, if you screw this up, it's going to be way more expensive than 200,000, because that's part of the comp, and we haven't considered your time, we haven't considered, the opportunity cost,
Right.
we haven't considered any of that. So how do you, he just was like, so you're telling me it's going to be worse than what I think it is? I'm like, yeah, if you
Right.
do it wrong, it'll be worse. And you've had a lot of success doing it the way you have been. Well, no, we haven't. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe you should try something different. So that approach sort of puts him back in his chair and makes him think about it differently. So, and a long story to kind of say, to get to this point of, when you're looking at a prospect, what are you looking for in that person? Yes, they have a problem, right? They need to hire people. Let's take that off the table for a second. But what are you looking for in that individual? What's important for
The
you to
most
think that you have
important that
success?
I'm looking for right now is, do they have a growth minded approach? Are they trying? Are they willing to try something different? Are they frustrated? Do they kind of have that little bit of inkling, or are they at least open to examining what's been done previous? So, one of our favorite doctors, went through that whole hiring mistake process that we help people with. And when I asked him about it, he's like, I quit halfway through because, my stomach hurt looking at the number. So to your entrepreneur friend, the people that are open to, like, hey, there's got to be a different way to doing this, or they're growth minded, or they kind of go to the Jocko Willink thing that they want, I can't remember what he says now, complete, relentless, ownership. They want to take that hiring of a salesperson and put that underneath their department. They want their fingerprints on it, because they know that they're doing something cultural more than just filling a role. It's building a team. It's bigger than just, putting a rear end in a seat. They're building a cultural organization.
Well, a high
Right.
performance culture, and we've had this conversation in the past, but everything flows from that sales culture. And I think that a company culture where it's positive and nurturing and supportive can translate to a sales organization that's high performance. It
Mm-hmm.
just looks different and it
Yes.
sounds different, right? Because we're
Right.
different. And so when you're thinking about it, like, so when I describe a high performance sales culture, and you get the sales guys in the room for the monthly sales meeting, and they're gathered in there, it's a couple minutes early, and they're talking smack to each other about who got the numbers and who missed, and there's this, like, this energy level in the room, right? And people are competitive, having fun, supportive of each other, but still like, that's, I got you. I beat you. Well, you only beat me by 10
Right.
grand. Yeah, well, but I beat you, right? Those kinds of conversations, um, I think, fit into a culture that's nurturing, supportive. It just is different. So I mean, your take, because you're a corporate America guy, is that, am I all wet? Am I does that not does that not work where you have this like fuzzy, warm, kumbaya kind of culture, which there's nothing wrong with it, right? We want to be supportive, and sometimes it goes a little far one way or the other. But I think the sales team has a slightly different
I would agree.
culture.
I view the sales team as like the corporate athlete. And if you think about any performance based profession, whether it's sports, whether it's the military, music, theater, any of those professional performance based things, there's a process, there's a winnowing process where you're kind of, you're kind of stripped down, you're kind of knocked down, whether it's physical fitness, whether it's, your singing range or whatever. There's some part of that organization where you're kind of, your sense of self is, everyone's leveled out, and then you're building back up, and then you're competing, and you have a strong bond. You have, whether it's, backstage or the locker room or the music room, and that, that energy that you're talking about, that challenging of each other, is all around support and building up. So it's a different kind of nurturing, and the salespeople, it's a different animal, regardless of how you're motivated, or regardless of whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. If you're trying to move, because that's really the only group that's saying right here today, status quo is not good enough, I have to get over to here. And that changes every year, changes every month, changes every day. There's no other profession that has to do that. And so it takes a different.
Well, there's no other profession where we
Yeah.
lose more than we
Right.
win, yet we're still expected to get up and keep
Right.
going, right? You keep getting smacked with the mallet, or you get shot at, or whatever the metaphor is, but you got to get back up and
Mm-hmm.
keep going. Um, so you need that tough mindset. But I've just been in sales rooms, where it's loud, there's energy, it's exciting, but there's still that level of support where I can make fun of
Right.
you, but nobody
Right.
else can. You're on my
Exactly.
team. You're in my family, right? Don't mess around. I was telling my wife this last night at dinner, where when I was a kid, my brother was a younger, a little smaller, he's a little chubbier, a little slower at that point, and I could make fun of him. He's my brother.
Mm-hmm.
That's my job as the older brother. But as soon as somebody started messing with him like, we're playing football, and the incident I'm thinking of, we're across from the park across from our house playing football, and somebody takes an extracurricular shot at him after a play, and I went to him like,
You can't
that's
do that.
not, you're not doing that. Stop. Can't do that. He's like, what are you going to do about it? And I just knocked the guy out cold right there, right, as a 15-year-old. And you know, it's to me, it's that you can't. I can do it, but he's part of he's my family. He's on my team.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that, right? And I think there's an element of that. I don't think we need to be beating on
I
people
think
or
most
taking
people would
taking a
realize
swing
that.
at people. But just saying it for the sake of saying it. Um, but I think you have to have a little bit thicker skin for that, to be part of that room, right? And what goes around comes around, and you better be able to
Mm-hmm.
take it if you're dishing it out. Um, and you got to be able to call each other out, and that's, to me, that's a nurturing sales room.
Yeah.
You're helping each other
Well,
get
and
better.
and we know that it's coaching, it's culture, it's accountability. It's, if we go back to the same, if we use the sports analogy, if I'm not doing my training right, and I'm not dieting right, and I'm not doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing as a teammate, I should expect you to get in my face and be like, hey, what's going on? Because the next step, if you don't do it, if my accountability partners on my team don't do it, then it's going to be the coach, then it's going to be the general manager, and then it's going to be something ugly. And that,
Right.
that thing that we have people looking for, that we look for when we're looking for the right fit, is people that want to do that differently, people that realize that that's next level. All of these 70 some percent of the people that made their job switch in the great resignation that are now regretting it, you know, they may have left a culture, or they may have gone to some other place that didn't have, the cultural aspects that they're looking for. And I think the real smart people these days are looking at it as they're building something more than just, filling jobs. They're or building a team. They have to create something more because people want more. And by the way, that want more is what leads to better success.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that make that analogy between sports athletes and salespeople and sales organizations, and I think there's a lot of commonality there. But I think the one thing that corporate America in small companies, the thing that is difference that causes that analogy not to work is that athletes expect to be coached and they
Hmm.
expect to practice. And salespeople are almost the opposite. Like, I know what
Right.
I'm doing. I don't need your help. Oh, really? Your win rate's 28%.
Yeah.
That's acceptable. Well, I'm doing okay. Well, I'm not looking for people that want to do okay. I'm looking for people who want to change and want to make a difference and want to hit their numbers and surpass them. And so I think that part of the culture is that we need to practice, we need to get better, we need coaching. And the coaching can come from a sales manager or a sales leader, but it also
Yeah.
can come from each other. Right? If you got somebody who's got some chops and some seasoning or knows something about one industry, right? I mean, they can
I,
help each other too.
if I could share a quick story, I was uh, coaching a salesperson that was a little resistant to coaching recently, and I reminded him of part of the big companies that I worked for. I worked for a spinal implant company, and when you work for certain medical device companies, they will bring in surgeons to review best practice, and do case reviews. And this particular company that I was working for had some of the most world-renowned spine surgeons, on the planet. And they would come in, and they'd come in a room, and if you want to take it to a sports analogy, it was basically a chalk talk. They would put the film up, and they would walk through the case just like you do a deal or a debrief or a pre-call, and they would talk about what went right, what went wrong, and then they would all challenge each other. Some people would get up and take a contrarian approach. Another surgeon would say, you should have done it this way, or did you think about it this way? They were in each other's business, in each other's face, trying to get better. And these are some of the best spine surgeons in the world. And, they
Right.
expected it. So it's, you want to be nurturing, but there's not a lot of tolerance for a salesperson that says, oh, I got it, I don't have to get any better, because you always can get better, and if,
Well, but that's a great example of a pro, right? A doctor goes to undergrad, then they go to what,
mhm,
7 years of medical
residency,
school, right? And then they're like practice doctor, right? They're not really
right.
experienced. Nobody wants them cutting you open and doing stuff, right? And then they become doctors, but they start out as a junior doctor. Salespeople, you get a 2 weeks of product training, and they run you through some half-assed sales process thing, and you're
Yeah.
3 weeks later
Hopefully
you're
they run you
sales
through a
pro.
sales process.
And well, but whatever it is, but it's all about product. It's not about helping somebody understand that you have a solution that might make their
Exactly.
situation better. So, I mean, that's a good example. So, podcast called Sales and Cigars. I'd like to end on, what's your relationship, if any, with cigars? You got a story? You got a favorite cigar? What's Can we end? Can
I
we
have
end there? You
actually
give
have
me
I have a good one.
something there.
I don't smoke cigars myself, but when I was younger, one of the two jobs I had, in addition to mowing lawns with my buddy Brian, we caddied at a country club, and every year they had an invitational, and there was a certain loop, there was a certain lawyer, a certain cigar smoking lawyer who nobody wanted to caddy for because this guy, he was left-handed, he was not very good, he was ornery, and he was a curmudgeon. He swore at caddies. He threw clubs at caddies. He was just, he was awful. Well, guess who I drew for the invitational? I got him. And it was the first
Grumpy guy.
blush I had with mindset and focus because I said, all right, this dude is not going to throw a club at me. He's not going to swear at me. I'm going to be the best caddy I can be. And I'm going to be ahead of the game. And my whole goal for these next 3 days is to not have him scream at me and throw a club at me. And so I worked my rear end off. And I ran ahead and I found where all his balls were, and I offered suggestions once we started to build rapport, and we had a great time. I had the guy smiling, he laughed. I learned about, why you want to be an entrepreneur at the end too, because when it came time to pay me, he had a lot of money he was going to give me. And then the caddy master was like, no, you don't have to give him that much. We're covering him. So he put half of my tip away because the caddy master.
Did you kick that caddy master's ass afterwards?
I should have. I didn't. I was 13 and he was 20, but I was not happy with him.
Cool.
But yeah, and he smoked cigars, and that was the first kind of that's the most thing that stands out from my cigar story.
All right. Well, this was originally we were going to be like, this is like, hey, welcome to Helix, and that seems a little anticlimactic because it's a couple of months now, but welcome to Helix family, welcome to the team, and I'm excited about where we're headed because we're sort of dividing and conquering, focusing on different things, and you're going to drive a bunch of business, but more importantly, you're going to drive a bunch of support to a group of people that need freaking help. VPs of sales directors, they've often been pushed into spots where they don't necessarily know what they're supposed to do, and they need some help. But if they ask, they look weak. And I think we have the ability to help them with making them look good if they're willing to get there. So if you're a VP of sales and you need to hire better salespeople and you need people that are going to perform and you want to transform your sales culture,
definitely
call Mike.
Yeah, thrhrilled to be here. It's a blast what we're doing, and you're right. It's a group that needs help, and it'd be nice to be able to move that needle away from I think now it's 12 to 16 months as the normal tenure of a VP of sales. Yeah, so
it's about 14 months.
It'd be nice to help move them past that because in the future, when the economy starts to retract, it's going to be even harder for those companies where the deals have just seemed to be rolling in, and we can help them.
Being a good salesperson is going to matter when competition is heavy and people are struggling. So I agree. All right, let's land it there. I appreciate the time. I'm glad we're able to get this done.
Thrilled to be here.
All right, man.
All right.